Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our COVID webinar series. Today's title is Flathead County Updates on the Return to Work Plan. We're pleased today to feature Flathead County Commissioner Randy Brodehl and Flathead County Health Officer Hillary Hanson. We're thinking of this as the third in our reopen series. We had Senator Daines 2 weeks ago with reopening the U.S. We had Governor Bullock last week featuring the reopening of Montana. And as I said, pleased to have two officials with Flathead County to talk about our local return to work plan. One item of housekeeping is that if you would like to ask a question, just click on your toolbar with your Zoom toolbar, the tab that is titled Q&A. If you click on that, you'll be able to type in your question. We hope to get to as many questions as possible in the time that we have. So to introduce today's program, I'd like to turn the mic over to Tom Ray, who's with Weyerhaeuser. He's also this year's chair for the Kalispell Chamber Board of Directors and also chairs our Government Affairs Committee. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Joe. Well, Randy and Hillary, on behalf of our 725 members here at the Kalispell Chamber, want to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for coming on today. I can tell you there's a lot more optimism this week in the Valley, but there's some questions too. So we'd like to have you start with some opening remarks and maybe let us know how you think we're doing in phase one to start from the county's perspective. We appreciate your leadership and look forward to the opening remarks, and then we'll go to questions after that.
Well, thanks a lot. I'm here with Hillary, and Hillary's going to jump in and start us.
So I just wanted to start with just a brief overview of kind of where we're at in Flathead County. Some of this, a lot of you guys already know. We have not seen any cases of COVID-19 in Flathead County for about 3 weeks. We ended before that with 37 cases and 2 deaths. We have been able to get to a great point in terms of testing. There's now testing capability in the county for anyone with signs and symptoms who wants to get tested. And we've really been focusing now on the reopening. So we do have an incident command system that is stationed out at the Emergency Operations Center. When this first started, we really focused on those cases, doing contact tracing, getting that side of it set up. Now that that's all set up, we've been focusing, trying to help the businesses. So we've released some guidelines on how to reopen businesses. It's available on our website, flatheadhealth.org. If you haven't seen it, we tried to go over not only what the governor's directives are, but at the same time provide additional ideas and things you could do to meet those directives. And we've been working with our environmental health program, which works with a lot of businesses in our community, particularly the restaurants, bars, breweries, etc., to make sure those sanitarians are available for questions. So we've had them working some extra hours over the weekend, doing some calls to folks, and then being available for any questions. We've also just worked with specific groups that have had questions, lots of work with the schools and the superintendents of schools. We've been doing work specifically with daycares, knowing that daycares are a vital part of getting businesses going again. We've been doing some sessions with daycares to see how we can assist them in reopening in a safe manner through all of this too. I think what we're seeing so far is reopening is overall going well. We're getting lots of questions, but it's questions from people who want to make sure they're doing it safely and protecting both their employees and those coming into their businesses. So that's the biggest piece for us. We do have a complaint line available on our website, and that's kind of how we've gauged throughout all this what are the biggest concerns and questions. And really, since this whole phase one started opening, we've seen hardly anything come through on there, which I think is just a testament to how well everyone is doing and how serious everyone's taking the directives and making sure that they can follow them as a business. So I think it's an exciting time for all of us in this COVID kind of world. That's all I have. Randy.
So I just say that we've been living, eating, and breathing COVID-19 for weeks and weeks now. And I think it's been great to watch our incident management team, and Hillary does lead that, manage this and do their best to help the governor's directives be successful here in our county. By and large, we're seeing that effect. We're seeing people be very responsive, and we realize it's frustrating. We realize that it gets very old trying to figure out when this is going to be over. We're right there with you, and we'll continue to be there with you. As Joe knows, we've started a business recovery team several weeks ago that has been providing information to Hillary. Those are all business leaders in the community, and giving her that input that she needs to make those decisions to get government out of the way of our businesses opening as much as possible, and yet to continue to live within the directive of the governor. So with that.
Thank you. We appreciate those remarks. We're going to go to the questions now. The first question is from Dan Graves of Whitefish Mountain Resort. And it's kind of a two-part question. The first is, I'd love an update on Glacier Park operations for this summer. And then the second part is, when are we going to go to phase 2? You knew that was coming pretty quickly. It says business are suffering, and looking forward to any updates on phase 2. But first, what about Glacier Park?
So I can just speak to my conversations with Jeff Mao. I definitely don't have maybe all the information on this, but I can tell you that Glacier Park is looking at about 150 seasonal workers versus their normal 330, I believe is the number, coming in this year. That's mostly due to lodging constraints. And so they're following requirements from the federal level for what they have to do for lodging. So with that, they are looking at some altered pieces in Glacier Park this summer, probably some closure of some visitor center, campgrounds, may or may not mean they're able to do buses and other pieces like that. They have not opened, as I'm sure you all know, and they're really, I think, looking towards the governor's directive, specifically with the quarantine, the 14-day visitor quarantine in place, and working to time that appropriately to make sure that an opening doesn't inadvertently I guess, push towards tourism coming in when we're not ready yet from a COVID perspective for that piece. So I know Jeff's keeping a close eye on that and listening to feedback from others. He's working not only with us in Flathead County, but also Glacier County and the Blackfeet tribe on this conversation.
I think too, it's important to know there's lots of folks who've been comparing parks across the United States and saying that, well, this park is open and that park is not, and trying to figure out what Glacier did. But the Department of Interior has given pretty much total decision-making authority to their superintendents of the parks to make those decisions about when they open as appropriate for that park itself. Yellowstone is moving through this process at the same time Glacier is, but they're going to do it differently.
Thank you. So do you have any intel on phase 2 and when the governor might move to phase 2? And then also, we've seen some of the counties approach the phase 1 in different ways. You follow just what the governor put out there. Do you have thoughts on what you might do in phase 2?
Sure. So I guess let me say I'm not sure I really have intel, but I'm going to give you my crystal ball perspective from kind of the public health perspective. The concept really behind this phasing piece of it is that we would move forward and then pause for a moment so that we could see how it impacts COVID in our community. So from that perspective, I would expect some pausing going on for about 2 to 3 weeks at a minimum before we move forward with many things. That being said, I also think that while we've kind of been viewing it as a phase 1 and then a phase 2, I actually think we're going to see the governor do a little more phase 1B, phase 1C, and move this in a little bit differently than it's been laid out as 1, 2, and everything comes with it. So I do think we'll see some additional things opening and changing here over the next few weeks. But I don't know that we'll officially shift to the full phase 2 at that point.
I think Hillary and I had a discussion yesterday. We kind of likened it to a faucet that you begin to open it up a little bit, and if things start going south, you can ratchet it back down, or you can say, you know, this is working, you open it a little bit more, and kind of that phasing in of the phases, so to speak.
And so right now we are following just the governor's directive. We do have the authority if we feel like something needs to happen at the local level. Some counties have taken that authority. I think Missoula County is one where they've gone a little more stringent than the governor's directive. No plans at this time to do that. At this point, we're just going to stick with the governor's directives.
Great, I appreciate those comments on that. Thank you. So next question is from Curtis Brodehl, and it is, why is so much emphasis given to wearing masks when many in leadership, even though it does not seem to be the most prudent measure to have everyone wear one? So what are your thoughts around mask and effectiveness?
You know, I mean, I think my answer to that is masks are only as effective as those of us who use them and ensuring we're using them properly. That being said, there is data out there. Randy's phone is ringing. Sorry, everyone.
Trying to get rid of it here.
There is data out there that shows that folks who are not symptomatic could still be shedding. And so that's really the point behind the masks, is even though you may feel well when you're out in the community, you could actually be shedding the virus, and likewise somebody around you could be. So we're still encouraging the use of those masks, but definitely want to make sure you're using them appropriately. So laundering them, not touching them, not taking them on and off. And we have to recognize for in some situations and for some folks, you know, for small children, masks may not be a feasible way of preventing spread.
Your insight on that. The next question is around private motels, and it says, are they allowed to open?
So private motels were never closed as part of the directives. So they could have been open this whole time. Probably the one exception to know, I guess, is that the city of Whitefish did put in place some restrictions around reservations that they could take, but that was just within the city limits of Whitefish. Everyone else has been allowed to operate.
The next question is anonymous. It says, if a facility/business is on multiple floors in a building, how does the number of people out on site at any one time change?
So I'm not sure that multiple floors makes much of a difference, as much as really looking at your social distancing. So really what we're asking in phase 1 is for businesses and facilities to ensure you're still doing as much telework as you can, you're still doing social distancing where available, that you're still putting in place all those components. So really you just want to look at space overall, whether it's across floors or one floor, you want to be cautious on the number of people.
I think too on that, Tom, the social distancing and the guidelines that are put together and the directive by the governor, so much of that is implemented through common sense. And so because if you tried to do directives for every situation out there, you'd have 3 feet of directives. And the reality is people have such capabilities of figuring out social distancing on their own. And we would really encourage people to kind of work through that, look at their situation and adapt the guidelines to fit their particular needs.
I appreciate those, Commissioner. Those comments, I think, really hit home. I mean, we have a lot of people out there and they are trying to do the right thing. And if they're given a little bit of latitude, I think you're going to see great results. So perfect. The next question, can you give guidance to some of us about or from out of state who own commercial property in the Flathead? Are we subject to the 14-day quarantine? If so, are there exceptions?
So the only exceptions to the 14-day quarantine are for workers. So if you're coming into the state to work, and I would put a couple of caveats on that, you can still work during that 14-day quarantine. We would still like you to follow all the appropriate things and have as little close contact with folks as possible. So still looking at wearing masks, social distancing, etc. while you're working. But you should be quarantined when you are off hours. So once you are done with the workday, you should not be in the community during that 14-day timeline.
Thanks for the clarification. I know there have been a lot of questions around that 14-day quarantine and what does that mean and how does it work? The next question concerns business from Canada. Since Canada is such an integral business partner, how do we see integrating them back into this country? Any thoughts on that yet?
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, we want to do, okay, so the business recovery team that we've been working with, they get that. They get that we need to get businesses open. And so much of our business is coming out of Canada, and you see up till now, you've seen those license plates in the parking lot everywhere you go. And you know, there's a lot of things about how much we'd like visitors to not spend so much time here. The reality is they're part of our community, just like we are. And so we're trying to do what we can to make them fit in the same roles as visitors coming in from out of state. And I don't know that there's really any specific difference that the governor has set up other than the 14-day quarantine.
And the decisions being made on borders being open and closed, which
Right.
has not been our decisions anyway.
Right.
Okay, thank you. The next question, are you recommending business to ask employees or patrons to sign a liability release? Any guidelines on this?
I feel like I should first say I'm not a lawyer, but no, liability guidelines have not come up in any of the conversations or recommendations that we've been giving to businesses. I think the thing to recognize is COVID's in our community, and what we're working to do is minimize the risk of it. But there's still risk whether you're going to work or just going to the grocery store or going to pump gas in your car. That risk still exists.
Yeah, I think if a business has some specific questions about that, they should contact either their attorney or their insurance provider or both to confirm what their recommendations are. We certainly haven't done that with county employees. We haven't. We're doing our best to keep business as functioning as possible, but we haven't asked our employees to sign any releases.
Okay, appreciate your comments on that. Thank you. So looking forward here in the Flathead, there are some very large events coming up where there's a county fair, the event at Rebecca Farms. There's a large concert scheduled in Whitefish. Those events take a lot of lead time. There's a lot of planning there. You got people coming in from from international venues in certain circumstances. Any guidance on when you're going to be able to talk about what the summer holds, this gradual, reopening, because, they've got a lot of things at stake out there. There's a lot of money already been put out. So I'm going to ask the question for all of those.
Yeah, this probably is by far the hardest question I'm going to get, because the short answer is I don't have dates in my head of when we could see those events being allowable. I've spoken to a lot of them. I'm happy to speak to more of them in terms of kind of how we're even looking at this, how we could move forward, some of the triggers and other things the governor could be looking at to make some decisions. But that's a really difficult piece. So I encourage folks to hold on as long as you can, but at this point, it would be very difficult for me to guarantee in any manner where we will be later in the summer.
I think too, we've got rodeos coming up. Most people don't think about the rodeos as being part of this because they're outside, but the reality is they fit into this just like anybody else. We've got a rodeo in Big Fork. We've got the one up the Blue Moon. We've got, of course, the one at the fair. We've got some smaller rodeos that are going on, and trying to make sure that they're fitting into the governor's guidelines is important to us. But what do we do when the governor begins to lift those? And we've had a lot of discussion about how that's going to work, including the fair and the carnival. The carnival is putting together their rules. They're planning on coming, but they will have their rules put in place to fit into what our needs are here.
And I think the encouragement, or the piece, and maybe it's not encouragement, but the piece I would tell folks right now is to start thinking about how you could do things differently. So as things open, if it doesn't open to just totally go back to normal, do you have thoughts and plans in place for ways you could still operate? So for example, lots of folks are looking at big places where social distancing can still occur. And we just want to make sure they're thinking through more than where people will sit, but also how you'll get people in and out, how you'll do concessions, bathrooms, etc. So I would just really push any events to sit down and be doing some brainstorming in preparation that things may not be open as normal.
I think too, it's very similar to what some of the larger churches are doing, where they're allowing families to sit together with a social distance of 10 feet between families in their church, and encouraging people to watch online instead, and kind of a combination of different things to make it work for them. And we spent quite a bit of time with the fair board, with one of the fair board members and the director at the fair, talking about what are the options, and what are, when this begins to open up, there's going to be different things that we have to try to anticipate and then fit in what actually comes through in the directives.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts, on that subject, because that is certainly, again, very important to the business community.
Yep.
The next question is from Tia, and it concerns graduation. Has the health department given approval for a socially distanced graduation ceremony outside for the high schools?
So yes, I have talked to the superintendent's lots throughout this whole piece of it, but they have been putting together graduation plans. I have not seen final graduation plans yet for approval, but I actually have meetings set up with Glacier and Flathead for Thursday to hear what they have in mind. So I know the schools are working hard on it, and they are in contact with us on that.
Great, thank you.
Tom, can I give you one tidbit on how all this actually plays out?
Absolutely.
The commissioners usually have a lot of authority in things that go on in the county, but in the case of a public health emergency, that rests squarely on the shoulders of the public health officer, which is Hillary. And we weigh in and we tell her our thoughts, and we give her some different perspective. But the reality is, when we begin to manage risk in a public health emergency, that sits squarely on the shoulders of Hillary.
Thanks. That's been a question that's been asked a lot, so thank you for that clarification. Randy, I got a question around the governor's task force. He put together a task force to come up with a recommendation on how to spend the federal dollars here in the state that are coming in. Have you taken a look at that report? It's out now, and do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think we need to be very careful when we get to the government trough, because when we get our face buried down there past our ears, we get pretty engrossed in taking federal money. And reality is that's just taking it out of a different pocket, maybe out of our left pocket rather than our right pocket. And it's real easy to get used to taking federal money. And this is my perspective as a commissioner and as a fiscally conservative guy. We need to get reimbursed for costs that we weren't anticipating that have been provided by the federal government. But I don't think we should be looking for any long-term funding. And I don't think we should be looking for the government to start new programs that we would become dependent on, and that we need to get out of everything that we're getting from the government as soon as we can physically do that.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Joe, did you have a question?
No, I think that we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have covered a lot of ground. Thank you. We don't have any other questions. Oh, let's see. Nope, no questions coming up on the screen there. Closing remarks, some thoughts about how we move forward?
On my end, I would just say, if people have specific questions, please contact us. We're doing our best to get out not only what the governor is putting out, but really kind of an interpretation of that and trying to help people put in place those directives. So it also, if you see something you feel like we're not putting out or things you could use more guidance on, please let us know. We have public information folks really working hard and just trying to get out the best information. So thank you for all you're doing, and thank you for working with us to help make reopening a success.
Yeah, and I would say too that the Chamber of Commerce is a great place to bring those questions, to get them narrowed down. Joe's on the business recovery team, so he could maybe answer some of the questions from the businesses about where we're going, what we're anticipating doing. And if you could bring questions to him, and then he can bring those to the team and to Hillary as we progress this. And the other thing I just want to say, thank you to everybody out there who has just been over backwards to make this successful.
Looks like we, thank you for those remarks. Looks like we did have another question or two come in from Dan Graves, again at Whitefish Mountain Resort. So it said, did I understand correctly that Jeff Mao is waiting on directives from the governor?
No, I don't believe he's waiting on directives from the governor. I mean, I think he's looking at the governor's phases to determine at what point in the phasing would be the appropriate place to open and time to open. But I think he's utilizing that along with feedback from the surrounding communities to make a decision.
Yeah, I think that's right. The park is not dependent on the governor to make those decisions. He has direct authority to make those decisions on his own. I know he's been in communication with the governor's office, but it's been advisory on the two sides, not this is the way you have to do it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it is a little bit confusing when we think about that federal, state, county level, how we interface all this and where guidance and direction is coming from. So thanks for the help on that. The last question was on the Big Sky concert. It said, I heard it was canceled. Is that true? I had not heard that yet, but.
I have not heard that. I have talked to them. I mean, they did call me and we talked through the phases and what all those pieces would look like, but they didn't tell me at that time what their decision would be. They were just information gathering. So I don't know.
The commissioners haven't heard anything saying that it's going to be canceled either.
All right, well, we were talking, a couple more questions came in, so we got a little more time, if that's okay with you two. So please give out contact info for hotline and the health department. That's a great question.
Yeah, sure. So our phone number is 751-8110. And it's mostly nurses answering that, but if you have specific questions to come to me, those filter to me too. And then flatheadhealth.org. And on our website, flatheadhealth.org, you'll see a few things. We've tried to put the most pertinent things on that very front page. So as soon as you go there, you're going to see some of these business guidelines and other things I've talked about. If you click the COVID-19 information page, that will take you down a whole nother route of seeing COVID-19 information and additional guidance. But we've put the newest stuff available right away when you go to our website.
Great, thank you. The next question, when the health department website states there are 37 cases of COVID-19 in Flathead County, that implies that there are that number of active cases, when in fact there are not any active cases at this time. Why is the wording they use wrong? Doesn't that present an inaccurate picture?
So when we talk about number of confirmed cases, actually, if you go to our website, what you will see is you'll see that we've had 37 cases, and then we actually give the status of those cases. So we actually show the number that have recovered, number of deaths. So you want to look at that second line to be clear on where those cases are at. But the cases is meant as a cumulative case count, not an active case count.
I think the recovery number is important. That's from I think the very first time we met, we decided that was an important factor in this, because we didn't want to just have cases hanging out there. I don't know that across the state that has been documented by the other counties, but I know we've done that because it's important for our community to know that we're getting well.
It is, and it's certainly good news to go almost 3 weeks now with no new reported cases. So that's great for the Flathead.
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah,
got-
we got it. I just wanted to let the audience know that we've got a great working relationship with the county here at the Kalispell Chamber. As Randy referenced, we're meeting weekly. Members of the team that both Tom and I sit on in communication, and as new communication and guidance come out from the county, we're putting that out in near real time to our membership. It's a group of 5,000 business owners and managers here in Flathead County. So that's we're pleased to be working with you, as well as helping support and communicate with the other 7 or 8 chambers here in Northwest Montana, and the Tourism and Economic Development Group. So there's been a great communication channel coming from the county as new guidance and directive and instructions come out. That's been working very well, Tom. So we appreciate the great relationship and the way we're working with the county.
Yeah, on behalf of our chamber members, we want to thank you again for your leadership, your time today. This communication is so important. There has been some confusion out there, so things we can do to clear it up, this communication really helps the community. So thank you.
All right. With that, have a great afternoon, and thanks for joining us this afternoon and sharing your time with us.
Thank you, guys.